ask yourself the damn question. Is winning the only thing you...
Sports today are not just played on the field. They're played every day, online, all over the world, by sports fans, just like you.
Don't you dare breathe. That won't get you anywhere. If you don't think you're a winner, you don't belong here.
Fantasy Sports puts you in control of your own team. The Nick Bonsanto Show is proud to present the Star Fantasy League Show. Find out who to sit, who to start, how to play, and have your daily fantasy sports questions answered with your host, Jonathan Sprung, co-hosted by SFL CEO Zach Stanley and SFL COO Seth Young. The Star Fantasy League Show, on the air.
Make this game your finest hour.
Now.
Hello and welcome to the Star Fantasy League Show here on the Sports Byline USA Network. I am your host, Jonathan Sprung. Not joined once again by Zach Stanley or Seth Young, who apparently got lost in a blizzard, stuck in Quebec, something like that. But I am joined once again on the air live by Matthew Footer. What up, Foot?
Oh man, it feels great to be back. I'm excited to be here for a second day in a row. Probably taking over the roles of Seth and Zach permanently. I'm going to determine that right now. But
you do realize it's their show. This is Star Fantasy League's the company that they run. So I don't think you're allowed to just come in and take their show.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I'm all right with the second guest spot. That works for me. So.
Oh, okay. You'll be on. Don't worry. The listeners like this. We got some love on Twitter at
right.
SFL Show. Tell us how Footer's doing. Tell us how I'm doing, man. This is one of our first forays into this. We love fantasy sports. We love talking about it. Today we have a full packed slate going on. We got a lot to talk about, Footer.
We do.
In the first segment of the day, we're going to be talking about some divisional breakdown real quick, some history on those games going into this weekend. We're going to pinpoint a couple matchups to look at. In the second segment of the day, we're going to break down some NBA. You and I put a lineup out on starfantasyleagues.com today in the free rolls just to get an idea of how you build a lineup. We're going to compare how we both go about setting that lineup, what to do. Footer, I know you're not into NBA that much, but you built a decent lineup, didn't you?
At least I hope so. I hope I don't get too much backlash when we do it. So
well, we'll see. We also got Derek Montilla from Sports Cave coming up in the third segment of the day. But hey, we got a full show to do today, and we got a lot to jam in there. You're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
Nick Bonsanto is proud to present the Star Fantasy League Show. Feel free to tweet the show at SFL Show.
We're back on the Star Fantasy League Show, and we are breaking down the divisional playoffs. From a fantasy standpoint, I mean, we got a lot of great stuff to look forward to. All of these games, except for one of them, are rematches from this season. So we actually have some data to go off of, and that's what we're going to be breaking down today, Footer. I mean, let's start off with the first game of the weekend, and that is New Orleans against Seattle. And the first time these two teams played, it was an absolute slaughter. Seattle destroyed New Orleans on a big stage at home. What do you got to say about that, what it has to do with this weekend?
I mean, Breeze had a terrible game, one of his worst games of probably his professional career, dating back to when he was quarterbacking at San Diego. He had some really bad seasons before he had the arm injury there. He had 147 yards, 1 touchdown, whereas Russell Wilson went off 310 yards, 3 touchdowns. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. You know how good the 12th man is in Seattle. These two teams met in the playoffs 2 years ago. When Seattle was a 7-9 seed and went and just destroyed New Orleans.
People keep bringing that up. That's a completely different Seattle team. Who was quarterbacking that team? I believe it was Matt Hasselbeck. Right?
Yeah, true. But it just shows that it's a tough place to play no matter how good of a team you are.
Well, that's when Marshawn Lynch became beast mode. That run that everybody remembers. They've replayed it 1,000 times, rebarreled over 10 defenders.
Broke the sound barrier with the cheer.
No, I think that was. Oh, I was going to say. I think the fans did that. I thought you were going to say he broke the sound barrier. No,
I mean,
he's pretty slow. He's pretty slow. You're a fan of Buffalo. You saw him basically trudge through mud. He's a pretty slow guy.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing I'm taking away from looking at this as a fantasy perspective is these two defenses are actually statistically really good. Like, New Orleans, everyone says, oh, Rob Ryan, he did a pretty good job. No, he did a great job. This team is no worse than 22nd against tight ends. That's their worst position against statistically a fantasy position. They're the 31st best against quarterbacks, so they're allowing basically the second least fantasy points against quarterbacks. Although Russell Wilson did put up a bunch of stats, but he was the only one that did well in that game. It seemed to be a pretty quiet game for Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the stats comparisons, passing yards per game. I said yesterday New Orleans allows 194.1. They allowed 195 to Philadelphia. Seattle allows 172 per game. So you're talking about a differential of about 20 yards right there. Run-wise, it's a 10-yard differential, 111 to 101. So you can't really get any closer than that for a playoff matchup. So I don't see this game being quite like a blowout like it was in the regular season, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this game should be a lot. I mean, it is the playoffs, and New Orleans is not just going to roll over. Especially, they've got that chip on the I hate to say it, it's so cliche, the nobody believed in us thing, but it's true. The talking heads spent so much time just bashing Drew Brees. They can't play outdoors. Guess what? Apparently, Philadelphia couldn't either because they didn't put up any yardage the other day. But before we get off onto Philadelphia, their fans right now are probably just throwing bricks at us. They're probably tweeting us at SFL Show talking smack right now, so let's move on.
This is the city that booed Santa Claus,
yes,
right?
They did, and they're probably booing us. All right, let's move on to a game that I'm very interested from a fantasy perspective to talk about is Indy against New England. These teams haven't played for 2 seasons. They played in 2012. That was obviously Andrew Luck's rookie year, but New England crushed them, 59 to 24. Tom Brady basically had a Tom Brady day, 331 and 3 touchdowns, didn't seem to be rattled at all. I mean, that was an Indy team that came off a 2-14 season, so are they a lot different now? They have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, you look at both teams, and you look at the player personnel and how much it has changed. Starting right with New England. No Hernandez, no Wes Welker, and especially no Gronkowski, who scored essentially 1/4 of their offense.
Yeah, he had 7 catches for 137 and 2 touchdowns the last 2 times these 2 teams played. And guess what? Yeah, you won't have Gronk, you won't have Welker, you won't have Woodhead, who people aren't talking about as much as they should be. The fact that they signed him to like a $3 million deal, San Diego did, why would you not re-sign this guy? You're just having so much trouble in the New England backfield. You could have had this guy for pennies.
The way he's helped that San Diego team get in, jumping ahead just a little bit, he might have been the best offseason free agent signing there is in the league.
I completely agree. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. I completely agree. But, I mean, these 2 teams are basically in the middle of the pack when it comes to defending all positions. Nothing really stands out other than the fact that New England, the second half of the season after Wilfork and Mayo went out, are atrocious against the run. Overall, against running backs, they allow the 12th most points, which isn't crazy, but at one point I think it was like 2nd or 3rd, and they were just getting run over every week. I absolutely love Donald Brown because Trent Richardson is clearly in every doghouse that ever existed right now, so he's off the board. Anybody else before we move on that you're interested in taking a deeper look at for when we talk about next time?
I mean, you can't overlook what T.Y. Hilton did last week. New England is against they allowed 239 passing yards per game, which compared to Indianapolis was like 232. So it's pretty much even on that. It's not really high in the league, but what he did against that Kansas City defense, who was lights out earlier in the season, granted had digressed as the season went on. I see him still having a nice game. Definitely not a 224 game, but I still see him being a guy that he might be the top wide receiver again next week.
Don't forget, Josh Gordon went out for over 200 yards receiving against this same New England defense. So could it happen? Of course it could. They let up a bunch to Antonio Brown as well. But quickly, let's move on to the matchup that, from a fantasy perspective, nobody really wants to talk about this game. San Fran and Carolina. I mean, do you have anything to say about this game that bodes well for anyone in a fantasy perspective at all?
I mean, it's tough. These 2 teams played earlier this season. It was a 10-9 game. Like we said in the last night, when it comes to rematches in the playoffs compared to the regular season, it's usually pretty much the same type of score. Look at the San Diego-Cincinnati game, pretty much the same type of score. So I'm expecting, a 16-13, a 13-10 type of game again.
And that means absolutely awful things if you're putting the only guy from a fantasy perspective that I even want to take a little bit of a look at is someone like Frank Gore. Because even in this defensive matchup where I think they had it was 401 combined yards for the 2 teams in this 10-9 game. Granted, it was a couple months ago, basically. But Frank Gore had 101 yards, so he had a 1/4 of the offense in the entire game. So, I mean, we're going to say this terrible thing again. He's got a little bit of youth left in him, but he really does. The guy has been an absolute consummate professional. He brings it. And especially in the playoffs, he's going to bring it for Colin Kaepernick. You know he is.
Yeah, and a guy I would definitely try to stay away from who had a great game last week was Michael Crabtree. Carolina is allowing 214 yards of passing per game. Crabtree went off for a 135, I believe, with 8 catches. They're just not going to give up a lot of yards in the passing game, and I don't foresee him repeating that type of performance. I see him giving maybe half that, to be honest with you.
That sounds about right. Yeah, I am really down on pretty much everyone in this game. But again, we'll break it down on Thursday when we do the full weekend fantasy focus for the divisional round. But this is just a taster. This is the hors d'oeuvre portion of the NFL talk for the Star Fantasy League show.
Tastes good.
Yeah, sure, why not? If you guys want to tweet us, we're at SFL Show. We like your comments. We like your questions. We'll answer any of them on the air. We promise you. Last game before we wrap this segment up is San Diego and Denver. Obviously, they're both in the AFC West. They've played twice this season, and I am not sure that they seem like the exact opposite games. We had 28-20 in Week 10 for Denver, and then a couple weeks later, I think it was 27-20. So, I mean, what are you going to do? It seems like it's exactly what's happening. Is you mirror one game to the other, one team won one team won the other. What do you expect with the third game?
Yeah, if you're looking at straight at stats, offensive comparison, defensive comparison, on the offensive side, there's no comparison. Denver is just hands down above any team they're going to come up against.
Well, don't forget to mention San Diego's defense has been. I mean, just comparing the last 5 weeks or last 6 weeks, their defense, they've been really, really good. But the first 2/3 of the season, they were atrocious. So did they improve that much? I'm not really sure. But Denver's clearly been the same team all year.
Yeah, and San Diego did something really well on Sunday. Phillip Rivers, specifically, he really managed the game very well. And that's what you have to do against a team like Denver, with a guy like Peyton Manning, Demaryius Thomas, those type of offensive weapons. You have to keep him off the field. So by managing the game, throwing it 16 times, so that means they're running the ball literally 2 out of 3 plays, probably.
Well, and don't forget, they had 198 yards of rushing combined between all the running backs, including Ronnie Brown's corpse came out of nowhere.
Yeah, seriously.
Nobody
didn't know he was still alive.
Yeah, so I said Ronnie Brown's corpse. There you go. I mean, obviously we're not saying that literally, but
yes.
It was basically a fantasy just no-show all season. He's behind, like we said, Danny Woodhead. I'm actually really intrigued to see what they do with him because you got to pass the ball a lot. Rivers isn't going to be thrown 16 times this week, and they're going to need to put the ball in Woodhead's hands, running and catching the ball, to have any chance to beat this Denver team.
Totally agree.
And we're coming up out of the break. We're going to be talking some NBA. Finally, we're going to be breaking down some basketball. You're listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
Play fantasy sports for cash prizes. Join the top daily and weekly fantasy leagues in the country at starfantasyleagues.com. Now, back to the Star Fantasy League show with Jonathan, Zach, and Seth.
Let's do this.
Time for your Star Fantasy League's NBA fantasy lineup breakdown.
We are back on the Star Fantasy League show, and this is our first foray on the air into daily fantasy basketball. Flitter, I am so excited. Basketball is my favorite sport. I'm a Celtics fan. I absolutely love talking about everything to do with fantasy basketball. It's the best.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said last night, if you're new to listening tonight, I am a Bulls fan. So we got 2 different sides of the ball right now going, fan-wise. So, and I will not admit my strength is definitely not in NBA. It's more towards geared to the NBA.
That's why this is going to be fun. I'm pretty deep into it, so I want to hear. You're going to be doing first. We all built lineups tonight. Excuse me, both of us. There's not 3 anymore. We built lineups on StarFantasyLeagues.com in the free roll. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, there's a $50 free roll. You put no money in. You build a lineup. You could win some pretty decent money for doing nothing.
Free money.
What's better than that? And you get to learn.
Money.
If you haven't played daily fantasy sports, the best way to do it is through a free roll. You learn, you win money. What's better than that? Seriously. All right, Foot. What you do on this site is you put in 2 guards, 2 forwards, 2 centers, and 2 utility, which is any of those spots. You have to keep the cap under 100,000 combined. Tell me how you came up with your lineup. What mindset you had going in? What did you look for? Who did you start with? Just break me down your lineup. I want to see, and then I'm going to make fun of every terrible idea you have.
That sounds good. All right, so I kind of decided to pick guys based on each category. I went this. I did the same thing that I do with hockey. I looked for guys who were strong in 3-point, strong in rebound, strong in points, strong in steals, blocks, and picked a guy specific for each one, not really depending on the position. So first guy I went with at guard was O.J. Mayo. for Milwaukee. And
Okay.
you're giving me the look right now
All right,
already.
and what was his salary? First, let's go with that so you give an idea to the listeners of exactly how on Star Fantasy Leagues you build this team.
Sure. His salary is $9,131.
Okay, so that's way under average for a player. Usually average is around 12 to 13,000.
Yeah, I decided to go for guards. To me, there's not a lot of strong power guards in the league. I think you can get more out of the forward position. So I decided to keep my guards kind of average, maybe a little above average at that point. So I went with Mayo. He's averaging about 15.6, somewhere around there, points per game on a terrible Milwaukee team, mind you. You know, he might
Understatement.
Yeah. He's probably not the best player on the team, but I was like, he's still producing for his price. There was around that 9,000 mark, there was nobody even producing the amount of points that he was putting out. So that's kind of what I went with. Next way, I went with Jimmy Butler, 10-9. Playing well for Chicago after he's back from that injury.
You know what? Let's take the second, since we're breaking this down, to talk about this Luol Deng trade, because I know why you had Jimmy Butler. I also have Jimmy Butler in my lineup because guess what? Luol Deng was shipped off to Cleveland for Andrew Bynum's. Oh wait, he's already gone.
Yes,
they literally traded him and cut him within about 8 seconds, which is what basically anybody that was trading for Bynum was doing it to cut the $6 million you saved and get under the luxury tax. So. Chicago's basically saying their season they're done. They're throwing in the towel. So having a guy like Jimmy Butler makes a lot of sense. He's going to get a big run at seeing what they have. Last year when some players were kind of down and Rose was out, Jimmy Butler really stepped up and he was putting up some monster numbers towards the end for fantasy. I had him almost every day for about a week and a half last year.
In the Miami series, he played, I believe, 5 or 6 straight games where he played the entire time. He played all 48 minutes.
I'm not surprised whatsoever. He's a young kid. You can run him like that. I mean, Chicago is pretty much an older team. They got the Boozers in there.
Who's probably going to be amnesty clause by the end of the season to save more money.
I think they can't do it until next season. But yeah, they've been mentioning that. Now that Deng is not an amnesty candidate, it's probably going to be Boozer.
Yeah.
Noah's not the most reliable player. You got Kirk Heinrich in there still.
Mike Dunleavy.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, he's really going to get a run. Jimmy Butler's a name, you guys, for fantasy perspective, you have to know. StarFantasyLeagues.com. If you haven't played daily fantasy basketball, get to know his name because he's going to be on the team a lot for you. I guarantee
So
it.
you're giving me approval for this pick, right?
I love it. Yeah.
All right.
Keep going.
All right. This is where I put most of my money in. Went with Paul George as my forward position. Guy's been playing almost MVP-like at some points this season. At $18,000, he's a lot cheaper than the guys who are producing, in his same role. The other forward position that I went with was Zach Randolph. $15,000 and change. The guy does basically everything. Rebounds, plays defense pretty well, scores. So I kind of went with, put my meat and my money in those two positions right there.
Yeah, you want to go for. I mean, it makes sense. You want to go for the double guys. The problem is Memphis is playing San Antonio. They usually play a really slow-paced game, but I think Zach Randolph just really relishes the opportunity to go against a guy like Tim Duncan because they're going to be fighting down there on the block, and I wouldn't be surprised if he puts up something like 20 and 12 or something. Mm-hmm. That's pretty at his price at $15,000. If he gets a couple blocks, maybe a steal, he could have a monster night. All right, who'll round out your team? Who else you got?
Sure, I ended up going with Roy Hibbert for one of my center positions. Just nothing flashy, just kind of a consistent guy. He'll get you 12 points. He'll get you.
What's his salary at right now?
His salary is around $13,000, just under $14,000.
So the only problem with that is, Indiana, Toronto. Indiana plays a slow pace. They play great defense. Surprisingly, Toronto with Valanciunas at center, they're pretty good. They're pretty stingy on defense. These are things you got to look into. They're the 6th best against the center position all season, and Valanciunas has been pretty good. Amir Johnson can guard the center position as well. I'd shy away from somebody like Hibbert because with as many games as are on the board tonight, I think there's a lot better value than
I'm
Hibbert.
glad I'm providing content for these people.
Hey,
don't pick this guy, all right?
I'm just letting you know. This is why we're breaking it down because you admit you are a casual player.
Yeah.
Casual player on StarFantasyLeagues.com. You guys, again, you're listening to the Star Fantasy League show. You can tweet us at SFL Show if you want to get us and tell Footer how terrible his picks are. Round out your team real quick.
Dirk Nowitzki is my other center position. I've always liked Dirk. He's only about $16,000.
I actually love that pick because they are playing against the Los Angeles Snooze Lakers. Mm-hmm. They cannot guard the center position whatsoever. I believe Robert Sacre is starting tonight at center, so enjoy that. I actually like that pick a lot.
And to round out my utility players, at that point, like we said, there's a $100,000 salary.
Yeah, so
I had about $16,000, so I wanted to split pretty evenly at that point. So I went with Ray Allen down in Miami. He's about 8'3". Just kind of a tossing guy.
Chalmers isn't playing. He didn't play tonight. Wade's gonna give it a go tonight. I mean, that's the problem. Some of these guys, they just don't go. You got to wait until the very last second to figure out if these guys are going to go or not.
And then at that point, I'm just looking for a guy to fill the value and not go under, so I went with Ramon Sessions. So.
Ooh, Ramon! Oh no!
So there we go.
How much is Ramon Sessions?
7,984.
Oh no! Footer, come on. All right, let's go to my lineup. Since I do play basketball every day, obviously. This is something
I didn't do too bad.
No, you didn't do horribly. There's a couple positions I would have stayed far away from. But I have a different approach. You said you went for like the couple of guys you kind of liked and did this. I usually don't do this. I went really big with like top guys. So I went for LaMarcus Aldridge and I went for DeMarcus Cousins. They are 20,488 and 21,031 respectively. DeMarcus Cousins, LaMarcus Aldridge, last time they play each other again tonight. They absolutely brutalized each other. They went at it. I think they both had pretty big double-doubles. They put up block numbers. They put up steals. These are guys that, despite how big their salaries are, on nights when they're facing some competition like this where it especially looks like they want to kill each other, I'm all over these games. Not to mention Sacramento defensively. They haven't really brought it. Across the board, they don't have anything better than 16th against the center position. But again, you're playing against LaMarcus Aldridge, who actually plays power forward, but he's pretty much he's a center.
Yeah.
He's a big dude. Obviously, Robin Lopez is pretty good in that position.
Yeah.
But those are the two big guys I went for. And then, like you said, Jimmy Butler is a huge asset tonight for your team. We're already in the first quarter. He's got 8 points, 1 rebound, 1 assist, 2 steals. He fills up the stat sheet, especially when he plays this much time. You got to throw him in there. He's got 14.25 fantasy points. He's on pace for 40. So that's a pretty good stat. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. Another guy I really liked is Taj Gibson at the center position for 10,784. Boozer's not playing. Every time Taj Gibson gets a chance to play, he's absolutely through the roof with value, especially at the 10,700 mark on StarFantasyLeagues.com. You really got to throw him in there because he's a starting center. Well, basically, he's a power forward again, but he's listed at center because he usually backs up either Boozer or Noah.
Yeah, and some guys just don't have the capability to start and are really great off the bench. When he gets his chance, he can do either.
He can kill. Another guy that's been killing, he is coming off a back-to-back, but he didn't play. I think he played 26 minutes last night because they were getting absolutely annihilated by Minnesota, is Thaddeus Young. He's 15,969. He's a little on the expensive side, but I like his upside playing against Cleveland. Cleveland's not very good. They're actually getting blown out by Cleveland right now, which is a surprise. I didn't expect at all, but I still think he's got some decent value. And then I went for the very, very, very cheap guys. So I went really high on one end and extremely cheap on the other. So, I mean, usually you put a bunch of guys, you get the top that you like, and then you try to find the middle guys. Mm-hmm. I went super high and super low. Mm-hmm. So the guys that round out my lineup at point guard, he's playing basically two, is Chris Douglas-Roberts, CDR in Charlotte. He's been starting recently. He's actually been putting up some decent fantasy numbers. We're in the early third quarter against Washington. He's got 6 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. Again, a guy that he pretty much fills it up. And for $4,700, you really can't do any better than that.
No.
So another guy I liked is DJ Augustine. We're talking a lot about this Chicago team. Guess what? Luol Deng is now not there. Carlos Boozer's not playing tonight. Somebody's got to get production for this team, especially Augustine, since he's been playing. Heinrich's basically on one leg at this point in his career. He's really not playing healthy.
Yeah, he's a defensive guy. He's a ball-controlling guy. He's a guy you're going to put in there in the safe situation and start the game. Augustine's a guy who's going to actually produce the points at this point. So.
Yeah, I absolutely. I kind of went heavy on Chicago. I mean, they are playing Phoenix. Phoenix is pretty average on defense across the board. Chicago likes to keep a low pace, but even so, I just absolutely love the idea of taking one big piece out who scores a lot and gets a lot of the production and having it trickle down to the rest of your fantasy players. So I expect a lot of them to get some points. And lastly, to fill out my lineup, Kendall Marshall has been an absolute delight, on fire for the Lakers. I believe he had a career high 17 or 18 assists the other day. That's how you round out a lineup. It's a really good one. When we come back, we'll be talking with Derek Montilla, and you're listening to the Star Fantasy League Show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
The Star Fantasy League Show is now part of the Nick Monsanto Show. Information is key to being a successful fantasy team owner, and the guys have all the updated info you need right now. Warning, warning. It's time for the SFL Late Swap Alert.
Oh, man, I love that music. That's pretty good, right, Footer? We got some late swap alert information for you guys. We did say we bring you every facet of fantasy sports, daily fantasy sports especially, but Serge Ibaka will not play tonight. He has flu-like symptoms. So if you guys, that game goes off in a few minutes, actually. It goes off in about 20 minutes.
Yep.
If you guys have him in your lineup, please make sure to get Serge Ibaka out on any site that allows for late swaps. Star Fantasy Leagues in the coming days, we are adding late swaps to our site. So if you have a player in there, you notice he doesn't play, you can swap him out for a better player. Look at that. Pretty easy. And speaking of swapping players out, we're going to add another member to the family of the Star Fantasy League show. He has a radio show himself in Arizona. It's called The Sports Cave. Joining us on the Star Fantasy League show, we have Derek Montilla. What's up, Derek?
Hey, guys. How's it going?
It is going absolutely brilliantly, except for, the fact that it's, is it 0 degrees out, Footer?
I think it's a little bit less at this point still.
Oh, my God. Please don't bring that. Derek, how warm is it where you are in Arizona right now?
You really want to know?
Yeah, I do. I'm a masochist. I want to torture myself right now.
I think it's getting into the 60s right about now.
Oh my God. I'll be in Vegas in 4 days. That's the only reason I wanted to know. Oh my God. But speaking of warm weather, I know you're into BCS and the whole college sports and the football. How'd you get into college sports? I noticed you posted a few pictures on Twitter of you being at some of these BCS games.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a blast. I actually covered the ASU Sun Devils football season, and they had a great year this season. And the opportunity kind of came up for us to go out and cover the bowl games. My partner from the Sports Cave, PLR, he was there covering them last year, and we got to go to both Buffalo Wild Wings Bowl as well as the Fiesta Bowl, and both were great games. But man, that Fiesta Bowl game was one heck of a game to be at.
Yeah, that sounds pretty exciting. A lot of I'll be honest, I am not into college football except when it gets to bowl season and some of these really good teams go at it and you get to see who the best are. Let's quickly talk about last night's game. Like I said, I don't watch, but I watched most of this game after the second quarter or about halfway through the second. Talk about that game last night. That was crazy, even for college football sake.
That was. I mean, even like you said, even if you're not a big college football fan, it's hard not to appreciate how good that game was last night. A lot of back and forth. Florida State was heavily favored kind of coming into it, but Auburn has been known as the giant killer this season. They've just had one of those magical seasons that everything for Auburn was, kind of fell into the right place at the right time for them this season. And even in the first half of that game, that seemed to be what was going on with Auburn. Their punting and their field position, Florida State's field position in the first half was just atrocious. So they were always working out of a hole, and Auburn, got the lead early on. But that game, man, that was definitely a great back and forth, especially there at the end. Jameis Winston, proved why he's the Heisman, winner, and proved to be a great leader last night. He definitely did his job. Maybe not on the mic so much afterwards.
Yeah, that was, oh my God, it got a little weird, a little bit too much of the whole like praising Jesus and he was getting a little preachery, I'm not gonna lie, but he showed me something. As a casual watcher, I've seen some of Jameis's plays, but he looked like he got punched in the mouth in the first half, and he did not stop. He came back and played an NFL caliber second half, and he went for it. What do you see from him when he'll probably come out this year, right? He has to.
Well, I think that he definitely has some maturing to do, but the abilities that he has and his talent are there. He definitely is a leader. You see him lead his team, and that's one thing, like you said, you look for in an NFL caliber player. I think last night a lot of college football players fall into that trap. They're in a big game, they start reeling a little bit, and they let their true colors show. And I think that's where the real great football players step up. I felt like Johnny Manziel did that in his bowl game, and I felt that Winston did a great job of that last night. I felt like he just went out there and did what he needed to do, especially when the team was down, to keep them in it, and made some good throws. And I think that his talents kind of translate over to the NFL well versus some of the other quarterbacks that tend to use their feet more often. He has a good arm and makes good decisions.
Yeah, I completely agree watching him. We're here with Derek Montilla on the Star Fantasy League show. You guys can tweet us at SFL Show if you're enjoying the program. You can get it Derek at _caveman with a K. Derek, let's move on to a little bit of hockey. I know you're in Arizona. You got that team, that Coyotes. Is that how they pronounce that team down there? I keep forgetting they have the hockey team.
Yes, sir. Yeah, believe it or not, the ice hockey capital of the world, Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah, right. And how much ice do you guys have? Is there any? No.
Well, in parts, we got some ice up north, in certain areas, but we do have a lot of hockey rinks down here. It's actually been a really, a lot of the leagues, especially midget leagues and junior leagues like that, have really increased the hockey, here in the Valley just as a whole. So I feel like it's really growing, and a lot of people love this team, man. A lot of people love the Coyotes.
Yeah, I was told that apparently there's some fair weatherness going on. Like, people only follow Phoenix sports. I think it was our buddy Adam Hess, who said that it's fairly fair weather because people come from all around the country and settle Arizona. Same with Las Vegas. You get a lot of fair weather people coming around. But is it true that they only cheer for these teams if they're decent, or do you guys have some pretty good turnouts?
No, I think the fans are getting better. I think that especially like the Diamondbacks fans that have been around, the Arizona Cardinals fans, the fan base is changing. It is one of those states that's a transplant state. So a lot of people come from Chicago and Minnesota and things like that. So the fair weatherness, I believe, comes from the fact that when times are bad, they can always turn their back on the local team and say, well, I'm from Chicago, so I root for the Bulls or whoever anyway, versus actually taking, credit for it. But when times are good, the stadium's sold out, and everybody wants to see him, and everybody roots for him. So I feel like that kind of is where that that stigma comes from the Arizona fans. But I feel like a lot of people are starting to be natives from here that were born here or grew up the majority of their lives here, and those, like any place else, those are the true fans that really make a good appearance, and good or bad, they always support the team. And I actually enjoy a lot of the fans that I've met out here. I'm pleased that we have some great fans following our teams.
Well, good. I would say if you're doing a local radio broadcast, if you don't have good fans, you're going to have a terrible time doing sports radio. Luckily, we do a national show, so you get a little bit of everywhere, a little bit of Atlanta, a little bit of the West Coast. So it's a nice mix. But yeah, the local stuff, you got to have good fans, or else you're not having a good time. But speaking of local fandom, how about those Phoenix Suns? They were supposed to be terrible. They had a bunch of not young players, a bunch of draft picks that they were stocking up. But do you think they could go the other way and go for some big pieces and make a run now?
I think that they need to be patient. I think that this is a great experience for the guys on the team, and they did. They got Gerald Green, they got Miles Plumlee, they got a lot of guys that were pickup guys from other teams that people felt were more, throw-ins along with trades, along with draft picks and such to make the deal sweeter. But really, these guys have come and they've had an opportunity to play. They've stepped up, and they've done a tremendous job. I don't think a lot of people saw the Suns getting Eric Bledsoe via free agency during the offseason. There were a lot of teams that were interested in him, but he chose to come here, and, he's had a tremendous season along with Goran Dragic in the backcourt. So I think that the team is really a completely different team from last season. So everyone was basing their performance and what they were projected to do on how the team did last season. And realistically, there's only 4 starters on the team that were on last season's team. So it is a new look, and I'll tell you, the young talent they're taking, it shows. You get that opportunity, and you either kind of squander it or you take your ball and, run with it. And I think that they've done a good job.
Especially with their coach, they're playing hard, especially under new coach Jeff Hornacek. It looks like they bring it every single night, and that's really important.
They do, and I think that it's just going to be a matter of time before they burn out a little bit, which will be the big, downfall to their season. I just don't feel like they'll have that energy because of how hard they work. I think that the season kind of drags on, and we'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a decent, run towards the playoffs, but I really don't think they have the pieces yet to contend for a title, and I think next season could be huge for them. Either trade those picks away and get somebody great in here and a big-time scorer, or, you can do a lot with 4 draft picks in the first round.
Yeah, really, not to mention they got some young legs, man. They may make a play at it, but they're in the Western Conference. You can't forget that. They could have some trouble. But let's switch topics back to hockey, because I know Footer loves to talk about hockey. Derek, you love to talk about hockey. Daily fantasy sports, especially hockey, is kind of a niche thing. There's not that many people playing it right now, but it's still a great way to learn it is to play on StarFantasyLeagues.com. I know that you've been looking over the daily plays. We got 3 games tomorrow. Tell us some of the things you're looking at, some matchups you like, and tell us how you approach daily fantasy sports. I know you're a little new to it, but how do you look into it?
Well, I'm just recent to the daily fantasy sports team, or especially hockey, but been following NHL fantasy hockey for the most part pretty closely, and I think tomorrow's got some interesting matchups, but it's a difficult day for fantasy because you really are limited on the number of games and the number of teams that are playing. It's just one of those kind of days. So, but I think I honestly think Ryan Callahan for the New York Rangers. I think he's going to be have a great day against Chicago. Chicago's just been giving up. I mean, they're always going to contend, and they're a good team, but they've been giving up a lot of goals lately. And I think that, it looked strong coming back. I think he was a knee injury that he was out on. So I think he could definitely be a good pickup for tomorrow. I was also seeing, obviously you have, players like Rick Nash, again, another New York Ranger going up against Chicago. For goalie, Craig Anderson has had his ups and downs this season, but I think he looks good, and he's been really solid lately.
What do you think about today they announced the Canadian hockey team, and of course the Montreal Canadiens are playing tomorrow. They have Carey Price. Do you think he's the goalie you want to put in your lineup tomorrow, or do you think you want to go on the cheaper side at this point?
I think it's going to be a toss-up. I think it's one of those things you're going to have to pay attention to real closely. But as far as Carey Price has gone, I think that's the reason why. The Canadians are where they're at right now, at least. I think that, he has a lot of upside, and going obviously on Team Canada, that it's been one of those things that they've taken a lot of criticism for the players that they've chosen, but at the same time, they're looking at their numbers this season and how they're performing recently as of late, and, he's been having a great season.
I like your strategy, what you did, especially with the light schedule tomorrow. You're kind of loading up on, the really star guys, the guys you're going to produce, which obviously are going to have a higher salary. But at the other time, the cheaper guys, it's definitely, you just got to get lucky with a lighter schedule, I think, with the lower salary players.
Right, yes, and absolutely with the fact that you don't really know. I don't know where Bobby Ryan sits in the salary range, but he would be another, I think, good pickup for tomorrow.
He's tearing it up this year with his goals, and goals and assists. He's on pace. He's, top of the league in scoring at this point. So I agree with that.
And I also think that, he kind of got snuffed from the USA hockey team. So I don't know, players like that tend to come out and play a little bit harder when even if they say publicly that it didn't bother them at all, not making it. Is one of those things that I bet we'll see him play even at another level for the rest of the season, or at least for next couple of weeks.
Well, Derek, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. It's enlightening because, like I said, I am a complete newbie when it comes to fantasy, especially daily fantasy hockey. And Derek Montilla from the Sports Cave, thank you so much for coming on the show. We hope to have you on the show again soon. And you guys are listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Sports Byline USA Network.
You're listening to the Star Fantasy League show on the Nick Monsanto Show here on the Sports Byline USA Network. Contact the StarFantasyLeagues.com guys via Twitter at SFL Show.
That'll do it on the Star Fantasy League show. I want to give a big thank you to Derek Montilla from the Sports Cave down in Phoenix. He came on, he graced us with his hockey knowledge. Footer, I know you were so excited to appear and do hockey talk.
Even that short couple minutes was just bliss for me because I could talk to a guy who understood what I was talking about. And he got the basketball for your side, so it was perfect for you.
I was going to say, I was excited. You were excited. I think Derek's going to make for a decent recurring guest on the air. What do you say?
I think so.
All right, if you guys want to hear more from Derek on this show, tweet us at SFL Show. Tell us what you thought of the show. Ask us any questions you want, but do not forget to go to StarFantasyLeagues.com. That's what we're all here for, is daily fantasy sports. NFL season is wrapping up. We got 3 sports right now. We got football for the divisional playoffs this weekend, offering over $6,000 in guaranteed prize pools, including that $500 free roll. You can't forget about that. Win a couple $100 for doing nothing. That's pretty good, I'd say.
I would say so, and I know for you guys coming up this week on Thursday, you'll definitely help the listeners out getting their lineups ready for the weekend.
Yes, we will. We got that weekend fantasy focus coming up on Thursday. Thank you for throwing that in there, Footer. I like that plug. That's pretty good, even though you won't be on, sadly.
Yeah,
we're getting Zach and Seth back on Thursday.
They can have the seat back.
That's true. You're
keeping it warm for them.
You're going to hold on to it. You're going to try. We also got, just for our listeners, we have a 100% deposit bonus to $500. That means if you put on $500, we're going to match that $500 in the form of a bonus that you earn. It goes right into your bonus account. You get free money again. We are just throwing it out there for our listeners right now. But all you do is you enter SFL Show when you make your deposit. You get that bonus right into your account. Nothing better. And we also have, don't forget, we have hockey. We got basketball every day of the week for the whole season. There's nothing better than that. Footer, thanks for coming on. Seriously, you really helped us out here. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. I hope to come back sometime, this season's, whether it's maybe next season when baseball's in or maybe towards the end of football. I'd love to come back and, offer my insights when it comes to that.
We will definitely have you back on. We love talking about fantasy sports. And if you can't pronounce Vladimir Tarasenko's name, we will make a better team next time. See you later.